Shelf.
Hello and welcome to Top Shelf Board Games. I'm Hubba, and today we're going to learn how to play Through the Ages, a new story of civilization. In this video, we're going to go through what you're going to do on your turn. This will get you a good idea of how the flow of the game works to help you learn the game in the shortest time possible. Let's go to the table and learn how to play. All right, on your turn, you're going to go through 4 phases. You're going to do start of turn sequence, political phase, the action phase, and then you'll do your end of turn sequence. The start of turn sequence, the first thing you're going to do is replenish the card row. Now this is different at the very beginning of the game. During the very first round, players will not replenish any of the cards. But assuming that this isn't the first round, players will remove the number of cards equal to the players that are playing. So if there's 4 people playing, you would remove the card from this slot. If there's only 2, you'd remove all 3 of these cards from play. Then you would shift all the cards down and add in new cards from the civil deck. Once all the spaces have been filled up, the end of the first age would end. This deck would then be discarded. The new civil deck for age 1 would be shuffled and put into play. Likewise, the military cards from age 1 would be shuffled and put into play as well. If there's any empty spaces, you would continue to fill these in with the new age cards. Once the first age has ended, the rest of the age 1, 2, 3 will be a little bit different when they end. So let's quickly go over how those work when you end age 1, 2, or 3. Age 1, when it ends, players will have to discard any cards from their hand that have become antiquated. A card is antiquated if it is older than the age that just ended. So where age 1 was the one that just ended, all of our cards from the ancient age would be discarded because they are now antiquated. Likewise, any leaders that you have in play that are antiquated will be discarded from play. Also, any unfinished wonders will be discarded from play. Also, any antiquated packs will also be removed from play. Then you would also remove 2 yellow cubes off of your yellow bank. The new age decks would be put into place. Age 2 would be brought in, and the age 2 military deck would be brought in. Empty spaces would be filled in with the new cards. Once the age has ended, you would then be able to continue on with your start of turn sequence. Once you've replenished the card row, the next thing you'll do is you'll resolve a war. If you had played a war card on the previous turn, you would go ahead and resolve that card now. The way a war works is you would choose an opponent, you would compare your military strength, and whoever has the highest military strength would win that war. No bonus cards can be played during a war. The victor would then do anything that the card says. The card would then be removed from the game. Next is you can make tactics available. If you have an exclusive tactic in play from a tactic card you played last turn, you would now have to make that active so everybody else can now use that tactic. You would take your tactic card, place it over in the tactic area of the military board, and now other players would be able to develop and learn that tactic. Next is the political phase. During the political phase, there's multiple different actions that you can choose, and you have to choose only one action from the options you have during the political phase. One thing you can do is you can prepare an event card. This is a card that has a green background. That's one of your military cards. To prepare it, you would take the green card, you would put it in the future event deck pile. When you play a card into the future event deck, you'll reveal a current event and resolve it. In this case, this is over a territory. Players would then be able to try to claim this territory. Players will add up any cards or any symbols that have the navigation symbol on them. Whoever has the most navigation will be able to claim that territory card and likewise gain any immediate effects from the card and add any permanent effects to their boards. Another option you could do during the political phase is instead you could play an aggression card. When you play an aggression card, you would then choose an opponent to aggress. Your opponent would then be able to play down cards in order to try to meet or exceed your current strength. If they're able to meet or exceed your current military strength, then they would prevent that aggression from happening. However, if you were far enough ahead on the military track that they couldn't meet or exceed your military strength, you would then be able to take the effects of this aggression. In this case, you would take up to 5 science from your rival. Another option you can do during the political phase is you can declare a war. You would simply take one of your gray war cards and place it down in play, and at the beginning of your next turn, you would resolve that war like we mentioned before. Another thing you can do is you can offer a pact during the political phase. You would choose an opponent and you would give them a pact card. You would then outline the agreement, and once everybody understands how the agreement works, you would put this into your play area, removing any other pacts that you currently have, and this would be the new pact that is in effect. Another option you can do during the political phase is you can cancel a pact. So if you don't want to be part of a pact anymore, you can remove a pact that's in play that you're a part of and discard it from the game. The last thing you could do during the political phase is you could choose to resign, assuming it's not the 4th round of the game. If it's the 4th age of the game, you cannot resign from the game. So during the political phase, you'll choose one of those actions, and then you'll move on to the action phase. The political phase is also optional. You don't have to play any cards if you don't want to. Once we move on to the action phase revolves around your white civil cubes and your red military cubes. These will determine how many actions you can take for civil actions and for your military actions. During the action phase, there's multiple things that you can do. One of the things that you can do is you can take a card from the card row. In order to do so, you would simply pay civil actions equal to wherever that card is at on the card row. Once you have chosen the card that you want to purchase, you'll take it and put it into your hand. Every card that you purchase goes directly into your hand, except for the wonders. When you purchase a wonder from the card row, you always have to pay whatever the card row wants you to pay. You also have to pay an additional civil action for every wonder that you currently have in your play area. So in this case, I'd have to pay an extra civil action because I already have the Hanging Gardens in my play area. Likewise, if you have a wonder that is currently under construction, you are not allowed to purchase any more wonders until this wonder has been completed. If this wonder isn't completed at the end of an age and it becomes antiquated, it'll be removed from play. An action you can do is you can increase your population. To increase your population, you'll take a yellow cube from your bank and move it up to your worker pool, and you will pay the food cost from whatever subsection that yellow cube has come from. So you'd have to pay 3 cubes. In order to pay food, you would remove blue cubes from your food cards that are in play. In this case, this blue cube equals 2 food, whereas this farm down here only produces 1 food for every blue cube. I would need a total of 3, so I could pull this one off that's worth 2, and this one that's worth 1, placing them back into my blue cube bank. That is how you increase your population. The next thing you can do is you can build a farm, a mine, or an urban building. To do so, you will take one of your workers that you have in your population area and move it up to one of the things that you want to build. If you want to build a farm, you'd move it onto one of your farm technologies. In order to move your worker onto this farm, you'd have to pay 4 resources. So you'd have to take cubes from your resources that you have and pay up to 4 of them to build this farm. Likewise, these cubes are each worth 2 resources, so you can remove both of them back to your blue bank to pay for that worker to now be a farm. You could also build a mine by doing the same thing. You would take your worker and place them up here on your mine and pay the indicated resources. You could also build on the older technologies that are cheaper, as long as you have the resources to do so. You can also build an urban building. Building an urban building is the same way. You would take an unused worker and place it onto whatever building you want to purchase. So if you wanted to be able to build this temple, you'd need to pay 3 resources. Anytime you build an urban building, a mine, or a farm, immediately apply and adjust your statistics. So in this case, we would move our smiley face up 1. This is our happiness. We would also increase our culture by 1. An action you can do on your turn is you can spend a civil action to upgrade one of your buildings. To do so, you would take a cube that's on a lower building and move it to a higher card on that same type. You would pay the difference in cost. So in this case, we would pay 2 resources, and that would upgrade our farm. We could upgrade our mine to a better one by paying 3. We could upgrade the alchemy by paying 3 resources as well and moving our cube up. Another thing you can do is you can destroy a farm, mine, or building. You would remove the yellow cube and place it back into your worker pool. This worker would then be able to be used to build a different type of building later on. Another thing you can do is you can play a leader card from your hand. So you can spend a civil action and put a new leader into play. If you already have a leader down, you would remove that old leader and put your new one into play. You can build a stage of a wonder. If you have a wonder in play that's under construction, you can work on building the levels of it. So in order to build this first level, we'd need 4 resources. So I can come over here and I could spend 4 resources by removing them from the board and taking one of the blue cubes and placing it onto the level that I completed. If I had completed this wonder, I would turn it right side up and again adjust any of my stats. So I'd move my happiness up 1 and my culture production up 2. Another option you can do is you can spend a civil action to develop a technology. To develop a technology, you would choose one of your cards that have the technology symbol up in the top left corner. You would pay the indicated technology amount. So I could develop the scientific method, which costs 6 science. I would remove my science down 6. I would take that card and I would put it into play. If there's a type that is already in play, I would place this over the top, creating a new level of that card. If I had put a card down that didn't have a matching symbol, then it would just go up in here to a different area and start a new type of building. Now remember, when you put a technology into play, you haven't actually created this building. In order to actually build this scientific building, you'd have to move an unused worker up there and pay the resources to actually build this building in order to gain any benefits that are at the bottom of the card. Another thing you could do is you could spend a civil action to declare a revolution. One way to do this is to create a rebellion. By doing a rebellion, you'll pay the smaller amount of scientific cost. In this case, we only pay 6 to start a rebellion. We'd have to spend all of our civil actions in order to do the rebellion. So if we had already spent a civil action, we would not be able to do a rebellion. But if we still had all 4 of them, we'd be able to discard them all, the smaller amount of science, and put that card into play. Another way that you can play a government card is you can pay a civil action to develop this technology by paying the full amount of 12 science, and then you'd be able to put it directly into play, gain the indicated amount of civil actions and military actions for future turns. This is how you can do it and still be able to take more actions on your turn. Another thing you can do is you can spend a civil action in order to play an action card. The only rule with action cards is that if you had purchased this action card this turn, you would have to wait until your next turn in order to play it. So where I purchased this one the last round, I can go ahead and play that action card now. Action cards are played down, you do the effect that's on it, and then they're immediately discarded from the game. And those are the civil actions that you can do. So let's briefly go through them one more time. You can take a card from the card row. You can increase your population by paying food and moving a worker up there. You can build a farm, mine, or building, urban building. You can upgrade by moving a cube up to a better building, paying the difference in resource. You can destroy one of these buildings, moving it back to your worker pool. You can play a leader from your hand. You can develop a stage of a wonder. You can develop a technology by paying the amount of science and putting that card into play. You can declare a revolution by paying the smaller amount of science on a government card, spending all of your civil actions to do so. Or you can play an action card, which are the yellow cards. Next is you can spend your red cubes, your military actions, to take military actions. You can build a military unit where you would take an unused worker, place it onto one of your military cards, pay the indicated resource. You would then increase your strength by the amount of the card. So in this case, our strength would go up 2. So we'd adjust our military track, moving our strength up 2. You can upgrade a military unit by taking a military unit that's already there and paying the difference in resources to create a better unit. You can disband a military unit by taking the worker and putting it back into your unused worker pool. You can spend a red action cube to play a tactics card from your hand. To do so, you'd put the card in front of you. You would then take your marker and place it on top. And now you would have access to this tactics card for this round exclusively. In the beginning of your next round, it'll go to the common area where anybody can develop your tactics. Let's go over tactic cards real quick. Tactic cards, if you have units that match these symbols,
then you will be considered to have this bonus in play. So in order to get the 2 strength from my military, I'd have to have a infantry unit built and a cavalry unit built. Right now I only have 1 infantry unit built, so I need a cavalry unit researched and a unit put on it in order to be able to gain the bonus from this tactics card. Another thing you can do on your turn is you can spend 2 red cubes in order to copy somebody else's tactics card. If I wanted to use this tactics card of mobile artillery, I could spend 2 red cubes, move my banner up there, and now I'd be able to use the bonuses of this card as long as I had those 2 units that make up that tactics card. Another thing to look at here, you notice you got a bigger number and a smaller number. If the tactics card has become antiquated, then you would only receive the smaller number. However, if the tactics was not antiquated, then you would receive the bigger bonus if you had that. Once you've spent all of your civil actions and military actions that you want to spend, you would then go to an end of turn sequence. The end of turn sequence, the first thing you'll do is, it's listed on your board, the first thing you'll do is you'll discard excess military cards. You can only have as many military cards in your hand as you have red cubes in your government. So in this case, where we upgraded our government, we can have 4 red cubes, so that allows us to have 4 military cards. We would then go to the production phase. The production phase is we would score all of our science and culture. So what we'd do is we'd look at our science production, which is +8, and we would score that much science. So our science would go up 8 points. Our culture is at +3, so we'd increase our culture track by 3 points. We would then look to see if we have any corruption. As you use these blue cubes and they get put onto the different buildings to be resources, you might have revealed the negative symbol. If you've revealed any negative symbol from your blue bank, you will have corruption during the corruption phase. What happens is we have to lose 2 resources. We'd have to pay 2 resources. We could remove one of these cubes down here, placing it back into our blue bank, and that is basically wasted resources that became corrupt. Next is we have food production. We would look at all of our yellow buildings, and each yellow building is going to produce 1 blue cube. Next, we would go to food consumption. You would look at the leftmost uncovered negative symbol, and that's how much food you'd have to consume. So you'd have to remove a blue cube is equal to 2 food. So in this case, one of these cubes is worth 2 food. We'd remove it back to our blue bank to pay for that food. If we didn't have enough food to pay for it, we would lose 4 culture points for every food that we couldn't pay. Next, we go to resource production. This is where all of our buildings on the mines will go ahead and produce. For each yellow cube, we will take a blue cube from our blue bank and place it onto the same level that yellow cube is at. That would end our production phase. We would then go on to draw military cards. You get 1 military card for each red cube that you didn't spend this turn. And once that is done, we would reset our actions. All of our civil and military actions that we use would then be put back onto our card. If we change governments, we would make sure we have the right amount of civil and military actions, and it would go to the next player's turn. Now, before you start the production phase, you have to make sure that you don't have discontented workers. If you have too many discontented workers, you'll actually have an uprising, and an uprising will make it to where you skip the production phase. The way you determine if you're going to have an uprising is you'll look at your yellow bank versus your happiness rating. For each subsection that is beyond where your happiness is at, you have to have at least 1 unused worker to prevent you from having an uprising. In this case, we have a happiness of 1, and we have 1 subsection that's open. So normally, if we didn't have any unused workers, we would be suffering an uprising. We would not be able to do the production phase. But we have 2 unused workers, which makes it to where we actually prevent the uprising. Once you're done with the production phase and you've reset your actions, play will then continue on to the next player, and they will go and replenish the card row, resolve any war cards, make any tactics available that they were exclusive in front of them. They'll play a card during the political phase at most of 1. You then go and do their action phases, spending the different amount of actions to take cards off the card row, upgrading buildings, building new buildings, developing technologies, increasing population, building military units, disbanding military units, upgrading military units, going into the production phase where they'll check to see if there's any uprisings. If there is, they'll skip production. Otherwise, they'll go through the production phase. And you'll continue to do this back and forth until you have reached the final age of the game. Once age 3 has been completed, you'll go into age 4 where everybody will get one more turn. And at the end of that age, whoever has the most culture points is going to be the winner of the game. Also, during that last age, when you calculate endgame points, all of the age 3 cards that have been played over in this future deck will be revealed, and then that'll determine extra points that you get at the end of the game. So even if these don't make it over to the current age deck, every card that gets played will still be revealed, so you can get those bonuses that you played in that last round. And that is how you play Through the Ages, a new story of civilization.